Hi, I'm Gemma, and this is a chat with Gemma. So, Gemma, what's happened to your fringe? Well, yes, just been outside. And you know when it's spitty rain? Um, and there's nothing that can be done. Anyway, what I wanted to talk about is something fairly negative, and I don't want children to watch this. So if you're a child or even a young teenager, I'd really rather you didn't watch this. So please find another video to watch. But if you're of the right age, then let's go. So I want to talk about panic attacks. And I know these days it's almost against the law to speak about negative things, to speak negatively, to bring people down. But I'm really good at bringing people down, so what ho, you know. It's my favourite thing. No, not really, I'm kidding. But is it always truthful to just look at everything positively, you know? When 100% of things have gone wrong, to find something to, you know, I think that's a bit silly, trying to find something positive to look at. And if somebody's committed a deep, dark sin, then I don't think you should congratulate them or find something positive about that either. So I do try to live my life in truth. So this might not be for everybody. But anyway, so if you're somebody who's had panic attacks, or if you've had a history of depression and anxiety, the thing that you can then, if things go very wrong and you don't get the right help, you can go further into eventually developing panic attacks, which are not very nice. And I would hate to think of anybody like going through that level of emotion on their own and just kind of stewing in their juices, you know, just suffering through it. I didn't used to do that. I used to always I'd just get out of the house, go to somebody's place, or at least ring somebody up on the phone or something to just kind of bring myself back down to earth if I could. But sometimes when somebody dies or they go overseas or for some reason they're not going to be in our lives anymore, you can kind of think, oh, who will I ring up when I'm having a panic attack or whatever it is? And as I've talked about recently, my father died, and you know, I can't complain because he was very elderly and I'm old, and some people have lost their fathers when their father's much too young to die and they're too young to lose their father, and it's just awful. But you know, even then it was still difficult for me. And one of the kind of things that just brought up this memory of this bad emotion was how I'd leaned on Dad during the worst time in my life with these panic attacks. I was just going through just a terrible time. And my dad really helped me, you know. And all of a sudden I just thought, because I'm, you know, as I've said, I'm single. I don't have that person who's vowed to love me for the rest of their lives, or, you know, is vowed to stick by me, and none of my siblings have taken that vow. And I could ring them, but, you know, they don't, there's nothing to say that they'll help me. But I just suddenly thought, oh, and I could feel like this, you know, I don't know, thing rising up in my chest, this sort of tension, pain, whatever you want to call it. And my breathing is starting to go, like, who would I turn to? You know, without Dad, who have I got? because nobody loves you like your mum or your dad, do they? And I don't know whether other people have been through something similar. So I'm just talking about it because you know, I want to help people who have maybe just, as I say, stewed in their juices, just gone through this level of suffering on their own. I would just hope that you would ring up somebody when that happens, and that you would find somebody, maybe get a counsellor, or use one of those, those lines that you ring up, Helpline, Lifeline, one of those, Beyond Blue, those sorts of things, and not just go through that all by yourself. I think that's really, really troubling to me. But it's sad, isn't it, when you have a certain person who just sort of gets you, and then all of a sudden you don't have that person anymore. Now, of course, this was completely irrational, because I haven't been able to rely on my dad in that way for a long time anyway. So I'm like saying that to myself, but you haven't been able to sort of call Dad. I mean, if I talked to Dad, it would be just on a very basic level, because first of all, he was very deaf, and I had to say everything at the top of my voice about 3 times. And he would sort of keep saying the same thing over and over again, that sort of thing. So his memory was really poor, and he couldn't kind of comprehend what I was talking about, or sometimes even who I was talking about. So I hadn't relied on Dad for a long time. So why all of a sudden was I having this panic attack? Well, I think it was just, our brain, we create brain paths. Again, I'm not medically trained, but from what I've learned, we create brain paths, and people like me have these brain paths that probably are not positive things in our lives. So when something happens, we go boom to that thought, and so we can go very easily to an irrational thought. I've talked about before, and I would recommend it again, the book The New Guide to Rational Living. And so they talk in that about how when you have an irrational thought, or a thought that's actually, an irrational thought is usually untrue. So when you change the thought to something that's true, you'll have irrational emotions. So the irrational emotions are, fear, terror, panic, anger, and depression, and anxiety, depression, anxiety. And so the rational emotions are frustration, sadness, annoyance, concern, and so on. So when you bring your emotions down, it's not that they're necessarily happy emotions or pleasant emotions, but you can deal with them, you can cope with them, you can survive them. Whereas the very bad emotions aren't that terribly good for you. I mean, I don't want to scare you if you're already scared, but, they're not that great. People who have a high level of emotion all the time can get a lot of colds and flus and things like that, and it can bring their immunity down. So that's why, it's so popular now to do meditation and have massages and things like that that bring your relaxation levels up and your emotions down. But it's not popular to talk about this sort of stuff. But I was thinking about my dad actually on another aspect. Was I used to worry about my dad and whether he was going through bad emotions, but he always seemed to be, there was no sign that he wasn't coping with them. And yet I had just, because I'd reached such an age, I had a couple of times seen Dad in a very emotional state, and So I know that Dad could reach that very high level of emotion. And my mother got to a point in life where, the kids are grown up. She was used to being the queen of her household, and now everybody gone except Dad. And Dad would get on her nerves, and she had a holiday house that she was able to buy when her father died and left her some money. And so she'd nick off and leave Dad behind. And I used to wonder, I was worried about Mum being on her own, but I used to worry about Dad being on his own, and there was never any indication that he didn't like it or that he felt sad or anything like that. But move forward in time to recently, we had an assessed Dad. It was to do with getting permanent residency in an old people's home. Anyway, and this lady first of all talked to us about Dad, and then she talked to Dad, which was, difficult because Dad by then had very severely developed dementia and didn't remember much, and didn't always perhaps understand the question. But at one point she said to Dad, "Are you ever sad?" And it was like as if Dad didn't really quite, what was that? And then, oh yeah, I did hear that question. And then he thought about it and then he answered it. So it was like there was a moment. And he said, yes, like I want you to know. Like, yeah, yes, the answer's yes, very definite. And I thought, oh, you're looking at a very elderly man. I just felt so sad about that. And I thought, well, maybe during those times, Dad was lonely and sad, but who was he going to tell, And the thought of my dad being lonely, being sad, and being on his own, maybe even being depressed, is just heartbreaking to me. And so I'm talking to you about this because it concerns me that you and other people out there could just sort of stew in your juices on your own, go through these sort of heightened emotions, but have nobody to talk to. So even if you'll only do it for me, will you please get somebody, will you please work out a strategy to get some help regarding these high-level emotions, please, please. And will you find somebody to ring up, even if it's only Helpline or, Lifeline. In Melbourne, we've got Beyond Blue, etc., etc. There's, you can find them. There's lots of different lines that sometimes you have to wait. Be very, very patient to get to talk to somebody, but at least do something like that, and have a couple of friends or relatives that you say to them, because I've done this. I just need a bit of support. I just need a bit of support right now, and they get it. They know what that's about, and so sometimes they know they've got to just listen, or just talk to me about anything. Talk to me about the weather, or the footy game you went to, anything, so that I can kind of come down to normality. Please do something for yourself, will you? And I hope you're not going through anything like that. Hope you're well. Hope you're happy, not too lonely. And if you are, may God give you what you need. God bless you, and bye for now.